Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. As always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby. I got to be honest, I did not know if I was going to do the podcast today because I was not feeling great at all last night, but I am here. I woke up feeling a whole heck of a lot better. We are here on the Recher podcast. I'm your host, Jay Recher. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today on this Friday, January 17. It was wild last night. I got progressively worse as the night went on, and it got to the end of the first period, and I was like, I'm done. I got to go. I got to get out of here. Everybody's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going home. I don't feel well. I didn't even really watch the end of that Lightning game anyway. It was a good thing that they won in the shootout, which was good. I ended up going back and watching it this morning and watching some highlights. But listen, when you don't feel well, and I know there's a lot of kind of nastiness going around, go home, rest, drink some of those the vitamin C packets or the emergencies. Dump in some water. I still got some right here. And take care of yourself. Don't try to push through it if you don't have to. The great Phil Esposito not feeling too good. He wasn't there last night. Bobby the Chief Taylor filling in for him with Dave Michigan on the radio call. But again, the great thing is that the Tampa Bay Lightning won. It's a victory Friday here in Tampa Bay. And shout out to everybody tuning in and saying hello. Appreciate you all. Thank you very much. Follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok for now. If they get rid of TikTok when I'm finally getting good at it, I am going to be pissed. Please don't get rid of TikTok. Not that I'm on there more than a ton of other people. I know people just continue to scroll through the videos. I just like it as a video editing platform, and it enables me to be able to take my videos and share them everywhere else without the watermark. And now, as soon as I finally get a little bit of a groove there, they're going to take it away. Please don't do that. Let's figure this out. Shout out to Jeff Taylor as well. Let's go Bolts. Like and subscribe. Subscribers up over 800. We got about 2 weeks left, guys. I'm trying to get over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So help out any way that you can. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Tell a friend, tell a family member, tell your dentist, your mailman, your local firefighter, police officer. Let them know the Jay Recher podcast is here to stay. Great guests. That's what we have here on the program every single day at 12:30. Bob Harig is going to join us from Sports Illustrated. Live Golf, POC Sports. They got a TV deal finally. We'll get into that with our guy, Bob. We'll also talk about the new TGL League with Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy and everything PGA. Nobody better than our guy, Bob Harig. 1 o'clock today, my old pal, Zac Blobner, is going to join us. He's going to give us his 2 cents on the end of the Buccaneers season, the Rays. What is the latest on the stadium? And then, of course, Urban Meyer going into the College Football Hall of Fame. We know with Zach being a Florida grad and a big-time Gators fan, there's really nobody better to ask than him. And then at 1:30, Eddie Encina, Eddie in the Yard. He's going to join us every Thursday at 1:30. He's going to be on a weekly schedule, just like we have Ian Beckles on Monday, Eric Erlinson on Wednesday. We're going to have Eddie Encina on Thursday. He was traveling. We had a little bit of a scheduling snafu yesterday on my side. So he's going to join us today, but he'll join us after today, every Thursday at 1:30. Make sure you are following my guys and you're helping them out. We want to talk about supporting local and how important that is. LightningInsider.com, my guy Eric Erlinson. Please do whatever you can to support him. LightningInsider.com. Use that promo code JNZ. Get $10 off this year and every recurring season after that. You can't beat it. It's not that expensive. You get some of the best Lightning coverage. And also the Tampa Bay Times. Do what you can, not just to help our guy Eddie Encina, but Mark Topkin and Rick Stroud and John Romano and Joey Knight. Man, you will do a lot. Right? I mean, we got to support local, man, here in the Tampa Bay area, and that will help out a ton. Hammer, LFG, what up, Jay? My wife bought us TGL tickets for next week. Tiger vs. Rory. I am pumped. How great is that? That's going to be really cool, Hammer. I cannot wait for you. That is a really, really awesome thing. That's awesome news to hear. Where is it? I don't even know. Let me know where you're going to be watching that, because that's the one thing I didn't look up is the locations of TGL. But yeah, so we have our guest today. Lightning win last night, but the big thing this weekend is going to be the NFL playoffs. And with a little bit of a break when it comes to the news to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we've had so many people give their opinion over the last couple of days, and I know we're going to get it from Zach in a little bit. But we've talked so much about the futures of Chris Godwin and Levante David and Liam Cohen and Todd Bowles and Spytek and Greenberg. I think we're going to kind of, other than Zach, kind of limit down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers talk today, but we're going to talk NFL and also Tom Brady here before we chat with Bob Harig at 12:30. But let's start and hold on, Russell. Down in SoFi Arena, West Palm. That's the only stadium they have built right now. Talking expansion, though. It's like the one thing I didn't look into in that whole situation. So that's great, man. Have a awesome time and take a lot of pictures and let us know what it was like. All right, you guys ready for this? You guys ready for the NFL predictions? NFL divisional round predictions? All right, well, here we go. Let's start with the 4:30 game on Saturday. The Houston Texans travel to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And listen, I love how that Houston defense was able to settle in last week against the Chargers. And, they gave up a couple of field goals, but they bounced back and they just really made it difficult for Justin Herbert and that team to really get anything going. The big difference in this one is that it's going to be in KC. And I was looking up the weather earlier. It's going to be frigid. And by the time the sun is going to set right around 5:30, it is going to be down in the single digits. No, thank you. You won't catch me anywhere near that game. CJ Stroud cannot afford another slow start in this one. He just can't. He can't rely on a recovered fumble, snap, scramble, throw to get him into gear. Joe Mixon is questionable. So, hey, you might need a guy like Dameon Pierce to step up. Remember him? The only way, in my opinion, the Texans can win this game is if they start fast. Hit the Chiefs in the mouth right away. It's been a while since they played in a competitive game, so Houston better make the most of that. If not, I think it's going to be a long, cold, miserable day for DeMeco Ryans and his club. You got Will Anderson, right? That's like your stud on the defensive side. I know you have Danielle Hunter too. I mean, I think he's one of the more underrated players in the entire game. They have guys at every level that can make big plays for this Houston defense. I think they have to start fast, start quickly. Kansas City, they rest their starters, and they had this division and that one seed locked up for a while. So that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to jump on them quickly and hope that they get so far behind that you force them to do something that is uncharacteristic. Turning the football over, having they feel like they have to push the ball down the field, because what they'll do is they'll dink and dunk you, short throws, they'll run the football. Very smart, intelligent football team. We know it's hard to bet against them. And I won't. I mean, I think the Chiefs win this game. They just know how to do it in elements like this against a team that, they have to make so many winning plays. Like, they have to play a near flawless game, I think Houston does, to win this game. Kind of like what we saw from Washington against the Buccaneers. Like, you can't turn the football over, right? You can't have these long, sustained drives. And you got to capitalize if Kansas City does turn the football over, you got to punch it in the end zone. You can't kick field goals. You got to score touchdowns. I think this is one of those weird scores, like 25-12 or something like that. I'm going to go with Kansas City in this one. Let's see. Our guy Hammer says KC in a tight one as well. And shout out to Lady Evil. Thank you for the kind words. Thanks for coming on and doing your great podcast. I appreciate you. Again, comment, questions, concern, leave them there at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to do my best to answer them for you. All right, let's go to the night game on Saturday night, and that's in Detroit. The Lions host the Washington Commanders. For all the talk about the Bucs and their injuries and players missing games, Detroit fans just laugh. They really do. I mean, it's insane how many players that they've lost on both sides of the ball, and they're still competitive. And you got to show love to head coach Dan Campbell and the coordinators Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, who seem to be on their way out after this season to head coaching jobs of their own. Well-deserved. I mean, you look at the job that Aaron Glenn was able to do against Minnesota. He is such an intelligent guy that has played in this league, and no excuses for him. No excuses for guys being down. He has found a way to take the best player on your offense out of the game. And for many years, that was something that Bill Belichick was doing in New England, right? You'd have these high-flying offenses, and then they go play Bill, and he'd say, okay, you can have this, this, and this, but you're not having that. And Aaron Glenn does something very similar for that Detroit defense. And that's why they're such a tough out. And that's why people look at them and go, yeah, regardless of the injuries, it's tough to pick against them. And you're going to get a big boost on your offense because it looks like David Montgomery is going to be back after that MCL injury about a month ago. They've been Gucci without him because Jahmyr Gibbs is such a dynamic running back. They're the best 1-2 punch in all of football. I think they find a way to control this game. I do think Jaden Daniels plays well, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Lions win a shootout 38-24. Keep an eye out for David Montgomery on the short line, right? Those are the short, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 goal line situations. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, will take the lion's share of the offense, but getting David Montgomery involved, he's just a different type of back. A little bit more of a hammer, a little bit more of a guy that's a physical runner that can get those short yards, get 2 yards when you need it. But they're flying high right now. I worry a lot less about Detroit and their break than I do with Kansas City because they had a competitive game in Week 18. And also, just because you're Dan Campbell, I may worry about them maybe being over-aggressive, maybe being a little bit reckless. But I don't know if I ever worry about them not showing up when it's kickoff. Like, I'm not ever going to worry about a Dan Campbell team being unprepared and just not having the energy. And that building is going to be rocking. So we'll see how Jaden Daniels and the rest of that team is able to kind of handle all of that pressure. Pressure one week, okay, but you got to be able to do it again. I'm a huge Jaden Daniels fan. I thought he was going to be the best quarterback coming out of the draft, and he was fantastic against the Buccaneers. But this is a whole different ball of wax this Saturday night against the Detroit Lions. And listen, I kind of hope he does win because if you remember, we had our guy Mark Ryan from 97 won the ticket up in Detroit on the show this week, and he said he doesn't see a way that Washington can win this game. He thinks it's an unwinnable game for the Commanders. He also said if they do win, to tag Freezing Cold Takes, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to tag Freezing Cold Takes, and maybe that'll take off because we love to see upsets, right? We want to see the team that nobody thought was going to win come out on top, unless it was what we saw last week against Washington, against the Buccaneers. So I take that back. 3 p.m. on Sunday, the Rams in Philly to take on the Eagles. Sean McVay put on an absolute masterclass, beating the Vikings in the wildcard round. It's going to be a much steeper mountain to climb against Philadelphia. That LA pass rush is ferocious. Again, I said this earlier this week. It's amazing how good they are without Aaron Donald. We've seen this so many different times in sports where you lose a key part of your team, and then there's just a black hole in that area, whether it's that exact position, whether it's that position group. You just can't find a guy to duplicate that performance from that future Hall of Famer that has retired. But what did they do? They assessed that situation with numbers. They threw numbers at it, and they are just such a relentless group. And they made life a living hell for Sam Darnold and that Vikings defense. It's going to be different, though. Even though that pass rush tipped the scales in the favor against Minnesota, I don't think they're going to have the same success against a team that seemingly has had a great offensive line for 2 decades. A lot of people wanted to see Saquon break that record in Week 18, but I think holding him out was the right thing to do. This team has Super Bowl aspirations. They're not going after regular season milestones. It would have been nice for them to be able to kind of get it in the flow of the games, but this team, and especially after being so close just a couple of years ago, they're trying to get back to the Super Bowl, and in their mind, they're thinking, okay, we got some young studs on defense. Okay, we have some new players on offense, including Saquon Barkley, who is going to be a top 5 MVP. But you also have the maturation of some of these guys that have been here a couple of years with Jalen and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, right? So they have to look at this opportunity going, hey, we saw how it ended last year against Tampa Bay. let's get our shit together, man, because we got a really good chance to make the Super Bowl, if not win the damn thing. I think they start that journey on Sunday. Jalen Hurts, another week removed from the concussion. And I just think after giving up 255 yards to Saquon in their 37-20 loss to the Eagles in their regular season matchup back in November, I think we'll see something similar. I don't think it's going to be 250 yards, but just think about it. Even if he rushes for half of that, he's still rushing for $120. Give me Philadelphia 30-17 in this game. I think that the Eagles come out on top in this one. But would I be surprised if the Rams win? No, because I think Sean McVay is the best coach in the game. And I know some people will say Andy Reid, and we're not talking. I mean, Sean McVay won a Super Bowl, so he's in that conversation of the best coaches right now. But every single year, it seems like people write off LA. I don't know. Can they do it? Stafford's a year older. They don't have Aaron Donald, right? Cooper Kupp's not the same guy that won the Triple Crown a couple years ago. Okay, what does that matter? When you have a good coach, even those guys went down due to injury earlier this year, and they kept their season afloat. And now you look at it. You look at Nakua, you look at Cooper Kupp, right? You look at Kyron Williams in the backfield. You look at Fisk and Jared Verse. I mean, this is a team that, they are – it's us against the world mentality. And when you have a guy like Sean McVay, it's tough to go against him. If it's a close game – I might lean towards the Rams. That's why I gave it a 13-point deficit. I think that Philadelphia has more talent on both sides of the ball, and I think there's more ways than one that they can win. But if it's a close game and it comes down to coaching decisions, I'm going to have to lean to McVay over Sirianni. But we'll see how that one shakes out. And finally, the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, 6:30 Sunday night, Buffalo hosting Baltimore. Buckle up, boys and girls. This could be a classic. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think we're headed for a Ravens and Eagles matchup in the Super Bowl, but this game has the best chance to upset that. I know some people might say Detroit or Philadelphia, but there's just something about this Buffalo team. I woke up this morning, and this was the game that I was kind of sure on the first three games. But this one, I keep going back and forth. I keep thinking about Josh Allen and the Bills. And you're getting Bernard, you're getting Milano, you're getting Teron Johnson, guys that didn't play in their regular season matchup against the Ravens. And I like the knack for making big plays in big situations that Josh Allen has the ability. He puts that on display time and time again. And we've seen how they've come up short, but I don't know if they've ever come up short because of him, right? I know some people are going to come back and give me some certain numbers, but I think of certain games against the Chiefs, and it's like Josh Allen did all he could. A drop pass here, a fumble here, a lack of a defensive stop here. I don't know if we really looked at many of these games and go, man, it was on Josh Allen. Where on the other side, I think we've had a couple of games like that with Lamar. You look back at the AFC Championship game last year where I felt like Lamar was trying to prove a point. Lamar was like, everybody says I'm a running quarterback, and I'm going to prove that I'm going to be able to beat you in the pocket. And I'm yelling at the TV. I'm not a Baltimore fan. I'm not a Kansas City fan, but I'm yelling, Lamar, run. Do what has gotten you here. He's such an amazing player. MVP. Who cares what everybody else says? But quarterbacking is about accuracy and decision-making. And that's part of the reason why Patrick Mahomes is number one. Is because he's able to make the long throw, the medium throw, the short throw, but he makes great decisions. And it's not just about throwing the football. Sometimes it's about running. Sometimes it's about faking like you're going to go out of bounds and running for 40 yards. Patrick Mahomes may not have as many rushing yards week in and week out, but he'll have that one big rushing play that puts Kansas City in field goal range to set him up for the game winner, and then boom, they move on, or boom, they win the Super Bowl. That is the difference between Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Lamar Jackson. As much as we want to talk about how they're a group of four, it's still Mahomes here. But how those other three guys make their decisions in games like this, these are legacy-defining performances. Because a team that is freaking really good is going to be going home Sunday night. A really good team. You're talking about two teams that when you watched in the regular season, you go, there's no way I want to play those teams in January. We're not even talking about the conference championship game. We're talking about the divisional round. where you have the 12-5 Baltimore Ravens and the 13-4 Buffalo Bills going head to head. And I think you look at that Ravens 12-5 record, and it doesn't seem like, I mean, they were probably more dominant than what their record showed, because there were certain games and you go, shh, man, you can't beat those guys. Look no further than the point differential. Now, I don't think the point differential or the run differential or the goal differential is the end all be all. I don't know if that can really tell you when a team's kind of in the middle of the pack, because there's a lot more that goes into it. But I do think it can tell you on either end of the spectrum how good or a bad, how close some of these games were, whether they come out on top or they lose. Plus 157. It's crazy that they're identical, the Bills and the Ravens. So I think about this game, and I kept going back and forth. And I'd like to see Buffalo win a Super Bowl for all those people that have went through all of those years where they lost 4 in a row. They have a franchise quarterback. Everybody wrote him off after the season. They said it's Miami's time or the Jets' time. And, you lose Stephon Diggs. So what are they going to do? And they're running the football. They run the football. They utilize the tight ends. Josh Allen makes so many good decisions. So when I woke up this morning, I really wanted to change my pick. I really wanted to pick the Buffalo Bills. But I just keep coming back to one thing and one thing only. And his name is Derrick Henry. Good luck tackling him in October. But you better pray to your Grammy when you have to try to tackle him outside in January. I think he's the difference maker. I think he's just an absolute hoss. And you can't just load up on him because Lamar's so damn good. He's got weapons on the outside. He's got two good tight ends. But even if they do load up the box, I mean, Derrick Henry is just such a beast. He's a monster. Baltimore in a thriller, 38-35. We saw Patrick Queen making business decisions last week. I wouldn't be surprised if certain defenders on Buffalo look at a guy like Derrick Henry and go, nah, I'm good. You can, no thanks. But that's going to be the best game. Sunday night, don't bother me. Don't bother me. Don't hit me up. Don't ask me to do any chores. No laundry. No dishwashing. Nothing. I'm going to be locked into Baltimore and Buffalo. 6:30 from up there in Orchard Park. All right, Bob Harig is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Again, follow me on all social media platforms on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok for now, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Some big news. I wanted to mention this real quick. Dick Vitale. He is going to call his first game after beating cancer for the 4th time. Dickie V, first time since 2023. He's going to be on the call for Duke and Wake Forest, January 25th at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Winston-Salem there at the home of the Demon Deacons. 85 years young. We know he's a big-time member of Team Tampa Bay. We love you, Dickie V. And to see how many people were ecstatic to see this news just shows you like how we all feel about him. He joined ESPN during the 1979-1980 season just after ESPN's launch, called the network's first major NCAA basketball game, December 5th, 1979. He's in the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame. God, this is such great news to hear right before we went on air today. So congratulations to my guy and to everybody's favorite, the one and only Dick Vitale. Okay, before Bob joins us, I want to get to this. And we saw this news today also when it comes to Tom Brady. Now, we heard from Tom Brady's agent that he is not going to stop working for Fox, even though it looks like he's going to take a more prominent role as a minority owner with the Raiders. This whole thing is fascinating to me. It really is. He has the ability to be a minority owner with the Raiders and still be a broadcaster for Fox. I mean, I know the restrictions. I read the entire thing. He can't go into team facilities during the week. He can't be in those broadcast meetings with players and coaches leading up to the game, etc. But don't tell me there's no contact at all. I mean, I've seen it 3 times this year myself where Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt, and this like shell of protection around them walking from the press box right in front of us to the elevator and down to the field. I mean, you saw it a couple times on TV this year where he was chopping it up with former teammates and other coaches down on the field. You saw it in Tampa, right? TB12 chopping it up with Baker, Mike, and even Liam Cohen. Yes, that Liam Cohen, who is a hot commodity when it comes to head coaching positions all over the National Football League. And guess who needs a coach? You guessed it, the Las Vegas Raiders. I personally don't have an issue with this type of thing because, listen, I'm not naive to think that these kind of conversations and tampering don't happen. Like, come on. There are so many direct ways and indirect ways for people to communicate in this world. I mean, there's just no way to monitor it at all. I mean, but if you're going to sit there and tell me that this isn't a conflict of interest in any way, well, the only people that you're hiding the truth from is yourself, because it's happening. You may think it's innocent. You may think it's not a big deal. Hey, fine. That's your prerogative. That's your opinion. I'm one of those people. Whatever. They're going to talk. They're going to find a way to speak to Liam anyway. But to act like these restrictions are really stopping anybody, or that there isn't at least a chance of this happening, come on, man. You've got the wool over your eyes then. Because how can you say, oh, yeah, it's not a big deal, he's not talking to him during the week, and then you can just go right down to the field and talk before the game? What's the difference? There is no difference. You're telling me Tom Brady's bugged? You're telling me he's got a microphone on him? You're telling me that somebody is going to tell Tom Brady, hey, don't go down to the field and don't talk to those players and don't talk to those coaches. There's a reason why this is in place, right? Because it's all about the look. It's all about the image. Well, we don't want to make it seem like Tom is doing anything disingenuous. Well, I'm sorry. That's what you're leaving yourself open to. If you have all of these restrictions and then on game day, Tom Brady's walking down to the field and talking to players and talking to coaches. I mean, he's the GOAT. He's going to get away with certain things. And that makes a lot of people mad, whether it's sports or in real life. But that is how it is. Certain people in this world get away with different things than you and I can get away with. Sorry. Certain people get things brushed under the rug. Certain people don't have to show their credentials. Certain people can kind of just wave and walk right by. Tom Brady gets that. He is the greatest quarterback of all time, if not the greatest football player of all time. Even though he has to abide by these quote-unquote restrictions, it's loosely interpreted. And we're also getting that in basketball with LeBron James, right? LeBron James is another guy that can kind of just do what he wants. Certain players, when they've been in the league for a while, you can skip certain things. You can skip mini camps and you can skip, team meetings, and maybe not Braden Point. But look at LeBron, right? I mean, who was it? Aaron Rodgers earlier this year for the Jets, missing the OTAs. It's Aaron Rodgers. I know some people will look at that as like that's the initial descent for this team. Here comes the downfall after that. Come on. Was that the reason why the Jets and Aaron Rodgers played as poorly as they did? No, but it just shows you, man, you earn that over time. You earn the Veterans Day. We hear it. And then I'm not talking about the holiday. I'm talking about, a Veterans Day during the week for NFL players, where you get to Wednesday and Thursday and you're like, yeah, Will Golston and Mike Evans ain't practicing today. Levante David's not practicing today. You're not getting that in your second year in the league. You're getting that because you've been there a while. JPP, I don't know if he practiced at all for the Buccaneers in that last year, but there was JPP. They knew that when Sunday came around, he was going to do his job, but also he's earned that. And that's JPP. Hell of a career, but he's not Tom Brady. So just think about it. In life and in sports, the bigger name that you have, the more equity that you have in the game, the more you're going to get away with. It's just the nature of the beast. Danny G, boo, you know where my heart is. If Bills lose, you will have a 10-second penalty getting into the locker room after the game. My guy, Dan Amelie Arena, he's the guy that lets us into the locker room after every single Tampa Bay Lightning game. For your sake, Dan, and for our other buddy, Dominic, and for all the Buffalo fans out there, I hope you guys do win, because it has been a rough, 3-4 decades for you. All right, let's bring in one of my favorite guests of all time, the one and only Bob Harig, joining us, SI writer. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Jay. I'm doing fine, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Oh man, such an honor and a privilege to have you on. I guess Tiger Woods is one of those guys too, right? As far as getting carte blanche and getting away with some other things that people won't get away with, huh?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if he got away with anything, certainly, but when he had that car crash a few years ago, which was horrific, there wasn't a whole lot that came out about how it happened, right?
Right.
We'd still love to know those answers. I get that all the time. Why don't you ask them? And it's like, well, his response at the beginning was, it's all in the police report, except it wasn't.
Right.
And so what's he, what impetus is there for him to really talk about it? But like, I think a lot of people would really like to know what happened, and that's probably a good example of what you're talking about there. That thing kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say covered up, but they certainly didn't dive into what really went on. And that's probably a pretty good example, happens all the time.
Yep. And I think when in a situation like that, when you look around, you're like, he was the only one hurt. Nobody else was hurt. So it's a lot easier for people to kind of like, all right, let's move on. If he was the only person that really was affected with this. Big news here in the last couple of days with Live Golf securing a TV deal there with Fox. And we're wondering, I know there was, talks of like, all right, what's the future here? I know there's a lot of money going into it, but this is a huge deal, Bob. And in February, we're going to see Live Golf, those 3-round tournaments on Fox.
Yeah, it is. It's important for them. It's if they had it to do over again, I think they would have tried harder. I'm not saying they didn't try harder. Maybe they would have waited. Of course, by not launching, they might not have ever launched. But they needed this at the beginning.
Right.
They've had 3 years of not really getting exposed properly, especially in the U.S. You can watch it. They've had a free app the entire time, but I still maintain that even though they skew younger, most golf audiences do not stream. It's even if their audience does skew younger than the PGA Tour's audience, I'm guessing that the overall number of people that are streaming it is not that big. So they need a good over-the-air partner like this. And the CW, even though it's in 100 million homes, it's not a sports network. So people aren't watching it and being reminded, oh yeah, Live Golf is coming on. It was up to affiliates to take it. It wasn't on Fridays. So this will be a lot better for them. Sports people know Fox. They know Fox Sports 1 and 2. They will be promoted during other sports telecasts, and it gives them a better chance to get some eyeballs. And also they're getting money. Mm-hmm. I get this a lot from the Live people. Like they talk about how great it's been for 3 years to be able to watch for free on an app. And I go, that's great, except it's not realistic. If you think about it, none of us consume sports for free. We either have a cable subscription, mm-hmm. or we're doing some sort of a streaming package. Right. We have a dish, or we're paying separately for streaming. Like, you are not getting it for free. Like, even when people complain about the NFL going to Amazon, they'd rather watch it on Fox or CBS. Well, but in essence, you're really paying for Fox and CBS. You just mm-hmm. don't think about it. You have a cable. Right. So Live has not had that, but that's without that, they've also not had the revenue. They're burning through millions of dollars every week they play. And at some point they need to and want to offset that.
Yeah. And there's a convenience, right? I mean, I think the older we get, we realize that, especially living down here, people want convenience. And if they can't just kind of casually go by it, golf's such a unique sport that you can watch it, whether you're dialed in or it's great background noise. Like, there's just so mm-hmm. many different things. Like, golf is you put it on all day. And I think that's where Live kind of missed out of. Like, you need to be able to get, you want the diehards, you want the young guys that love streamers, but you want people that are just kind of channel surfing. And they're just like, oh, golf's on. Oh, look, I know that guy. Oh, look, there's Bryson. Yeah, let's put it on and we'll keep it on for the rest of the day. You're never going to get anybody going to the CW or going to Live Golf on the app that are just kind of casually, like, nobody's stumbling on that. And I think that's one of the big things that people miss out when they're talking about that. Do we have any? I know the points are a big thing, right? And does this help that argument at all? I know that's one thing that, the guys are looking and it's just such a weird dynamic. And it was so black and white. Maybe it never was black and white, but do we get any closer with these guys if they're winning tournaments? They get credit outside the majors, because it's something I know that's still a big drawback for those guys.
Yeah, they don't have official world golf ranking points. Yeah. And that's a very contentious issue. And the OWGR has people that are part of it that are within the golf ecosystem. It's represented by the 4 majors. It's represented by the PGA Tour, by the DP World Tour. And if you want to make the argument that it's stacked against LIV, well, yeah, it is. Those people, and especially for a long time, have seen no reason to want to give LIV credit. I don't think that's exactly fair. We could argue about how strong the fields are in LIV, but winning a LIV event and beating the guys that you beat isn't worth 0. It's worth something. It might not be anywhere close to what winning a PGA Tour event is, but it's in there somewhere, and they're getting nothing. And does this bring it any closer? Probably not, because LIV has decided, first of all, they pulled their bid for ranking points. The OWGR in late 2023 actually did come back to them when they denied their bid. They gave them the reasons why. And the biggest reason why is they don't have proper turnover from week to week. And this is very, very in the weeds. But, this week on the PGA Tour, the field at the Amex is different than the field was last week at the Sony Open. Right. And it'll be different next week at the Farmers Tournament at Torrey Pines. There is churn every week. You're getting different levels of players coming in and out. When they play their first signature event at Pebble Beach, which is a smaller field, it's much more top heavy, but there is a way to qualify your way into those tournaments. For LIV, it's the same 54 players every week. There is no week to week turnover. And also they now have a very, very small window for actually getting on the tour. They have one spot through their promotions event, and they have one spot that's earned through, it's called the International Series. It's a series of events on the Asian Tour. So, in theory, only 2 new players can come on, and the other players come on through being picked. The team captains can choose a player. Look, in their defense, they view themselves as a league, not a tour. It is teams. And, the Bucks don't just have somebody that's pushed on them who comes through the draft. They pick them. So that's their argument. And I get it. But if you want to be within the ecosystem of golf and have some, be able to earn points for their individual players, you've got to do something. And there are ways they could. First of all, they have the resources to make it happen. Right. They could expand their field to 60 players. They could have weekly qualifying and make those guys a team. If there is ever a deal with the tour, I could see a scenario where every week there would be a different PGA Tour team that competes in a LIV event, and it rotates. So that's 4 different players. And then if you had a qualifier every week, the tour a lot of weeks has a qualifier. 2 or 4 spots are available. If you're good enough, you can qualify your way in. LIV could do the same thing. And if you get in a LIV event, you're making at least $50,000. It's worth it to try.
Right.
So there are some avenues for them to explore. So far, they haven't wanted to. And so the OWGR is like, look, we told you, and you're not even trying. So we have this stalemate. Now, if there ever is a deal, I got to believe some barriers are going to come down and they're going to compromise and try to figure something out. Because John Rahm is a good example. He didn't win a major last year, but he won twice on LIV. He was never outside of the top 10. He was 7th at the British Open. He finished 2nd at the Spanish Open, which is a DP World Tour event. He was 7th in Scotland. These are events outside of LIV, the Dunhill Links. I believe he was in other words, he's had high finishes, but his finishes on LIV didn't help him at all. And so now he has dropped from being 2, 3, 4 in the world when he went to live. He's 26th in the world. John Rahm is not the 26th ranked player. Bryson is around 9th or 10th. He's probably in the top 3 or 4.
Right.
But they're not getting any credit for what they do over there. And, this is part of the stalemate that we're part of right now that needs to somehow they need to figure out a way to resolve it.
Do you think there'll ever be a resolution, Bob? Do you think there'll ever be kind of a joining of this so we don't have to have these questions? And it's just weird, man, because it's cool. I always like alternatives in sports. I like that there's it's like I'm a big wrestling fan. I like that there's different companies, right? That you can go player trade here and player trade there. But it's just weird that, like you said, we have these official world golf rankings that we grew up on, right? And now John Rahm isn't even in the top 10 when if any tournament you watch him and you're like, I don't think you're an idiot if you pick him to win. Do you think there'll ever be any resolution? And do you think we're closer now to a resolution than we were when Liv first started?
Yeah, I think there will be, but what it looks like is really sort of the big question. The problem I see with all of this is, I'm all for alternatives too, but in sports in general, monopolies actually work. Like years and years ago, talk to people who watched the USFL back in the day. Okay. They liked the spring football. They liked the idea of another, getting to watch, and obviously football is king, right? We could probably watch it all year round. The problem with it is that there was a lot of people who rightly said, I want to see Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie, Jim Kelly, Steve Young. I want to see them in the NFL.
Right.
I don't want to see them in this other league. And so by them being in this other league, they weakened the other league. And eventually it dissolved. In the NBA way back, the ABA merged some teams. Even hockey had a rival league. Golf is such, golf is such a niche sport. And we already have tours around the world where, Europe, Rory McIlroy plays both. We need a way that they can all play, that they can go between. I don't know how that works, but to have them be separate is not good. When the Memorial Tournament is being played at Jack Nicklaus's course, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, there needs to be a way for them to play there if they want to. I get, though, why they're not allowed to. This has been very divisive. So are we going to have a deal? I think so. The PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, which backs Live Golf, has been looking to get into golf forever. And they're willing to invest $1 billion in the PGA Tour, which, they've already gotten $1.5 billion of investment from a different private equity group. So if they do that, though, I think they're going to want to see some return. And to keep stymieing the league they've propped up, Live, I think is going to require there to be some barriers to come down. And how we get to that point, though, I have a feeling that is why this is taking so long, because there's probably 50 different opinions as to which way to go and coming to a consensus and working that out is, I guess, I'm gathering is not easy at all.
Yeah, I'm sure people want to come together, but there's 50 people with 50 different suggestions on how. What do you think about the TGL, man? I love to see Tiger out there chopping it up. He's mic'd up. He's having a good time. Love to see this, version of Tiger at this part of his, not just of his career, but of his life. To see him out there busting chops, making bad shots and just kind of laughing it off. A lot different Tiger than you saw growing up, with stone-faced focus on all these things. But what do you make of TGL and their kind of hope for the future, and also Tiger's disposition during this whole thing?
Yeah, I went to the first two. The building is spectacular. The technology is really impressive. Anybody who's hit into a golf simulator and thinks of it as that is like, what's the big deal? No, this thing is 5 stories high. It's immense. And they're hitting off real grass and real sand, when they're hitting into that screen. They've got a lot of big money behind it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's harmless. It's a TV show one night a week for a couple of months. It doesn't impact regular golf. In fact, they've worked really hard with these guys to incorporate them into TGL without it impacting their regular tour schedule. In other words, if a guy wanted to be playing this week at the Amex, he wouldn't have been scheduled to play on Tuesday night in West Palm Beach. It'll be a little bit easier when the tour comes to Florida because their events will be on Monday night, so they can get down to West Palm. So I don't see a problem with it. I think there's an audience for this. I think that it's possible that maybe this gets people to want to say, they saw the other night, they saw a guy like Sahith Theegala. He was pretty into it. Now, maybe they'll want to go watch him when he plays his next real tournament. Maybe they'll tune in and see, hey, yeah, that's the guy I saw in the simulator. And there he was having a good time. Now he's being serious. So, and it is good. I mean, obviously this keeps Tiger in the limelight. I was very curious from the very geeky, totally into golf standpoint with Tiger. I was looking at his numbers. The tech shows you exactly how far he was carrying it. It's maybe not quite as good on the short shots. I mean, Tiger is not hitting a 60-yard wedge shot 30 yards long. I think there's something there that isn't quite right yet that they've got to figure out. It's hard to get the feel, but with the long clubs, I got a chance to see how far Tiger was hitting it. And, that gives you an indication as to how healthy he is. So I think in a bigger picture, it's interesting to see how far they hit it. What kind of club head speed they have. If you're into those technical things in golf, I think it can capture that audience. And then there's, the kids who like video games or who are into this sort of thing. And it's only 2 hours. Golf is a long commit, 4.5 to 5 hours,
right.
A lot of downtime between shots. One thing that these guys are doing that real golf needs to probably try to implement as a shot clock. Is interesting when if things ticking down and all of a sudden these guys aren't quite ready and they have to hurry up and the overall game could really use something like that because the rules aren't enforced.
Yeah. Well, you get Brian Harmon and his waggles. He might have to cut it down to 4 instead of 14.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and a lot of it though is he could waggle as much as he wants if he takes care of all the other stuff before getting to that point. If you get up to the ball right away. But there's all kinds of times when these guys take way longer than they need to. They're not ready to play, and I think it hurts the product. A 5-hour round of golf is actually it's usually 5.5 when they play threesomes on tour. There's just log jams out there and a lot of waiting. So we'll see if any of these things kind of maybe filter into the real game.
What do you think about Tiger as far as does he have anything scheduled for on the tour this year? How much do we expect to see him this year?
Well, he was not likely. First of all, he's playing in TGL again on January 27th. And that'll be the last time he does that until the Genesis Invitational, which is his tournament, which yesterday they just announced is going to be moved. It's in LA, and because of what's going on in LA with all the horrific fires and everything, they've made the determination, and rightly so, that they really can't play there. The golf course isn't affected, but the surrounding area is really bad, and they don't want to take from resources, so they're going to move it. They haven't said where, and since it's his tournament, that's always where we expect him to come back and play. So I think that will give us an indication. I saw him last month at the PNC in Orlando when he was playing with his son. Now, look, that's a fun kind of hit and giggle event, but he walked for 3 days.
Yeah.
The Pro-Am and then the 2 rounds of the tournament. He had a card available that you're allowed to use it there, didn't use it. It's the best I've seen him walk since the car crash. I mean, that part looked good. He had a back surgery in September, like his 6th. And my sense is that's now giving him some relief. His back was bothering him a lot last year, and he didn't let on. This is typical Tiger. He doesn't talk about it. Like, you could tell something was up, and he wouldn't really delve into the details, but clearly he was not feeling good that way. So he might have a window here where the walking is pretty good, the back feels okay. And, hopefully after the Genesis, wherever it's played, he commits to a tournament in Florida like the Players Championship, which is about a month before the Masters, because I don't think this playing just the majors, it's just not conducive to success.
Right.
You're not competing enough, And then you're trying to beat Scotty Scheffler, who's been playing every week or every other week, or, Xander, these guys. I mean, as great as Tiger is, he still is, by the way. If you put Tiger over a golf ball, he can still hit at 300 and some yards. His iron play is world-class elite. His short game can be good if he's working at it and he gets competitive, but there's nothing to sort of replicate the being inside the ropes and the real thing. You just can't replicate that. You can't replicate adrenaline, crowds, and what your opponents are doing. And so I just think he needs to play a little bit more and play a little bit outside of the majors. I mean, you show up at Augusta National. It's a hard golf course when especially with tough conditions. It'll go down as one of the most underrated rounds of his career. But last year on the Friday, the Masters, it was howling out there. It was chilly. The wind was tough. Guys were shooting a million. Tiger shot 72, even par, to make the cut by 5. He easily made the cut on days that a lot of guys were missing. And, it's 24th straight time he made the cut at the Masters, which is a record. But then the next day, something went wrong. He shot 82. His back gave out. You could tell he was coming out of shots. But that Friday round was sort of epitomized just how good he still is. Just hasn't been able to stay healthy or be able to get through a full tournament. And I think a lot of that has to do with he's just not sharp. And so we'll see if he can get sharp.
That's the thing, is you get sharp by playing a lot of tournaments, but then your body might not allow you to do so.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for Tiger. He's not going to be able to play consecutive weeks. He's not going to be able to play 15 times. But playing 5 times isn't going to work. He needs to play 8 or 10, and how do you balance that? Like he clearly, after he plays an event, there's kind of he needs to decompress for a few days. He needs to get off his feet. Well, while other guys are going to the next tournament working on their game, he probably can't for a few days. And then he needs to amp up again. So it's a tough balance in there. And, next year he's going to turn 50. He's hinted at playing some Champions Tour golf where he'd have a cart. And I actually think that could be good for his major championship golf because he could compete
right
while not having the wear and tear of walking. And even senior golf, it's competition. It's inside the ropes. You're still sweating out shots, and that might allow him to get a little bit more competitive.
And he wants a little revenge on Longer because of what happened at the PNC, right?
That's right.
What a great, it's become a tradition, Bob. Now I go home every year and me and my dad and my whole family, we watch it because it's so intriguing with the father and the son, the mother and the son. We see Annika out there. It's like, and what a great tournament. Like Charlie hits the hole in one and the way they went to the playoff, like they couldn't have asked for anything better this year at the PNC.
No, it's been pretty good. Tiger and Charlie have given that tournament a boost, which has created some awareness for it. It's been kind of a sleepy event in December. But, back in the day, Jack Nicklaus used to play with his sons. Arnold Palmer played with his grandson. I mean, Lee Trevino's played in like every one. He's 85 now. They play off different tees to try to make it, equitable. It's a pretty nice event, and Tiger gave it a pretty nice ratings boost too. It did really, really well for December golf up against the NFL.
You got that right. Drive, The Lasting Legacy of Tiger Woods, and the Tiger versus Phil book, which I've read cover to cover twice, and I've given it to my dad. My dad loves it too. The one and only Bob Harig, golf writer for Sports Illustrated and a member of Team Tampa Bay. Thanks for contributing to the top sports stars of Tampa Bay. That was a big help there as well, my friend.
Got my son to help out with that. We debated, and I deferred to him, but no, that was fun. That was fun. Thank you.
I always appreciate you contributing. You are the best. If I ever have a question about golf, you are the man. We'll talk to you again soon, and if I don't talk to you before then, I'll see you at the Valspar in a couple months, brother.
That sounds great. Appreciate it, Jay. Have a good weekend.
You too, buddy. Man, it just doesn't get better than Bob Harig. Like literally. You have any question or you want to know the ins and outs of golf, and it's great because Bob gives you the minutia, but he also gives you the overall picture too, which I think that's important when you have a sport that's it is a niche sport because I know not everybody's into it, but I love it. I love playing it. I love watching it. I love being there. The Valspar every single year has become something that I'm so excited for the Valspar. And my mom and dad came by last year and they loved it. My dad's a big golfer. He loved it. My mom loved just being outside. We just posted up at the 8th hole last year, par 3, and we just sat there all day. We sat there for the second part of the day on Friday and then all day Sunday. And it was awesome. We had such a great time. It was outside, beautiful weather. Everybody at the Valspar is just great people. Like Tracy West does such a great job as the tournament director. My buddy Rick Odiosu, who I was sitting with last night at dinner. God, I love everything about the Valspar, and we know it'll be here before you know it. And hopefully we'll get our guy Rondé Barber on to talk about that here in a couple of weeks. It's great. It's great. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, I will not have a show on the day of the Valspar Media Day. For the first time in forever, I'm going to be able to go to the Valspar Media Day, and you can actually go play on the Copperhead course. So you can bet your sweet ass the J Retro Podcast is taking a day off that day, and I will be playing golf there at the Copperhead. So I cannot wait to be there. Shout out to everybody over there at just the Valspar. I just love him so much. Lady Evil has a question. Jay, what do you think about the Tyreek Hill talk in Tampa over Sudden after his tweet yesterday? AB all over again. I think we have other knees. Yeah, I mean, listen, you're never going to want to turn away a guy that is that talented. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league. One of the best wide receivers that we've seen in the last decade. I don't want to say you ever don't need him, because I think you look at that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that we had back in 2020, and I think you would have been okay having Evans and Godwin and Gronk, right? But you had a guy like Antonio Brown, so that definitely helped. And in the Super Bowl, caught a ball there. So I think it was just more of like, hey, let's go see what's going on in Tampa. I don't think Tyreek Hill is actually coming here to be like, hey, Jason Light, put me on the squad. But one thing I know about the Buccaneers, they know how to deal with the outside noise, and they will use a guy like that. And if they utilize him, it is going to be an awfully tough offense to stop. I am not worried. And this is the big thing too, when people talk about the difference in Todd Bowles and Liam Cohen, right? When you have situations like this, I feel a lot better about a guy like Liam Cohen. I feel a lot better about a guy like Todd Bowles being here, let's say if a Tyreek Hill came over, than Liam Cohen. Right? Because Todd Bowles runs that locker room in a way where the leaders in that locker room on either side of the ball are going to let Tyreek know this is the way it's done. You're either going to fall in line, you're going to get the hell out. Liam Cohen, if he is the head coach, he has to establish that new foundation, establish that new culture. And we spoke about it the other day about how Tom Brady was here. He taught everybody how to be a professional. That culture. And it wasn't just him. I know it was Jason Light, it was Bruce Arians, it was the whole crew. But I'll tell you, from one year to the next, it was completely different. To be able to see a team that was very loose, you had Jameis Winston, everybody had a good time. But if mistakes were made, they were made. All right, forget about it. No big deal. It wasn't like that with Tom Brady. It was like, there better not be any freaking mistakes. That ball does not hit the ground. This is the level we need to be at. This is the level where we're at. This is where we need to be at. And we need to even take it up another level if we're going to be Super Bowl champions. And in the first year, they were able to do that. So that's one thing that, I just want to keep everybody in tune when we're discussing this whole thing about Liam Cohen versus Todd Bowles, right? Todd Bowles is a holdover from that mindset of where the bar needs to be. Levante David's another one of those guys. Mike Evans is another one of those guys. Chris Godwin, Will Golston, right? But the farther you get away from that 2020 team, the less players that were on there, the less players that know what that standard is. You're not worried about Tristan and Antoine. Those will probably be the last guys standing, right? But let's say Levante doesn't come back. I don't think Will Golston's coming back. We know Mike Evans doesn't have a ton of years left. So it's less and less guys. And Ndamukong Suh's not here. JPP's not here, right? Let's keep in mind those certain things, that standard that needs to be set if you're going to be not just a competitive team, not just a playoff team, but a team that's going all the way. Because the Buccaneers don't just have aspirations to make the playoffs every year. They have aspirations to win the whole damn thing. And the expectations certainly have changed. And that's the discussion that we had with Greg Allman from Fox Sports on Wednesday. Look at how a guy like Levante David has helped Tom Brady and also these other guys of, hey, expectations are different here in Tampa Bay. It's not just, oh, we're Chris Mathis. Happy to be here. On that note, let's bring in my former tag team partner. He'll always be my tag team partner, the one and only Zac Blobner. Love the hat, bro. I was just talking about this hat. We had Dave Gestation on last week from For the Bay. I was just telling him how this hat is like my go-to beach hat, and I get compliments all the time because it's so crisp and so clean, and everybody's like, "Where'd you get that hat?" And I'm like, "Bro, For the Bay." How's it going?
Yeah. It's good, man. Things are great. Yeah, it's so crazy you bring that up because, like, I have a bunch of hats from For the Bay. I have a bunch of hats in general, just like you, but, like, from For the Bay, I have a few. This one specifically that says Tampa Bay on it, it's the same design. Obviously, we have different colors. Same idea. Like, not to say I don't get love for the other hats and not to say that people don't love all the For the Bay, like, apparel and hats and clothing. But for whatever reason, like, this hat just sticks out and folks are always amped to find out where it came from and try to get their hands on one themselves. But happy to be on with you, brother. Having had a chance to catch up on the sports side. Obviously, we're still keeping in touch pretty good, but excited to kind of chit chat a little bit, man, and just get into it, man. So much going on.
Yeah, you got that right. Before we do that, let everybody know what's going on with our guy Brandon Kravitz out there, the Zone Heads podcast. I try to check in as much as I can and just watch a little bit of each one. You know how crazy our lives are, but man, I love what you guys are doing over there. Give us an update.
Yeah, so getting together every Monday morning with him just to kind of recap all the big sports stories. We're kind of focused on NFL playoffs right now and college football championship, obviously, as we wrap up what's going on with the gridiron. And then he usually kind of gives a little bit on the Magic. So it's kind of a Tampa Bay, Orlando connected situation that we're doing again every Monday morning, usually in the 10 o'clock hour, but we're going to re-bite and re-put out all those different things from the podcast. So yeah, doing the Zone Head podcast with him, just trying to keep fresh and keep the conversations going. Obviously, and I always said this too when we were on air, like whether it was you and I, or I was, a day solo, or I was on the Fantasy Fix with him, or I was with one of the other guys on DAE, like talking sports is what we do naturally anyways. So right. putting a mic in front of us is just one extra step to what we would be doing Monday through Friday regardless.
You got that right. Let's talk about this Buccaneers team. They unfortunately lost Sunday night against the Washington Commanders 23-20. Just your take on the game first. We'll get into the futures of some of the guys, but some of the kind of big things that stood out to you in that game.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously games are not just one thing, one quarter, one play. That being said, like Baker Mayfield fumbling that football, it was by far the biggest moment of the game. And I love Baker. I love what he's brought to this area, to this team. And I think he's better than that moment. I don't think that defines him, let alone his career in Tampa Bay. But that was the biggest moment in the game by far. Mm-hmm. And like, to me, that's always going to stick out. That's always going to be the part that I look back on, just like how the Antoine Winfield situation against the Rams, like people were always going to bring that up, and Blake Snell with the Rays in the World Series. For me this year, I'll always look back and say that was where Baker Mayfield had that messed up exchange with McMillan in the backfield in an area where you didn't necessarily need that. And there were a couple other parts. I think that the Graham Barton snap count situation a little bit later on was also a big moment. But again, turning over the football that time of year, it's playoffs. Like, you can't get away with those types of things as easily. So that thing stuck out to me the most. And then from just like a general watching point of view, I got to give a lot of credit to Cliff Kingsbury. I know we love what Liam Cohen's brought to town here from an offensive coordinator position, but Cliff with the Commanders and a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels, he walked in, road playoff game against a squad that knows each other and isn't a stranger to the postseason, obviously, with last year, and had a great offensive game plan to the point where guys like Vita Vea couldn't catch their breath, hands on their hips, man. And like, I don't knock Vita or any of those guys. Kalijah, I would say, was probably the best defender for the Bucs all day. But they just couldn't get into a rhythm, and you can't sack and really continually pressure Jaden Daniels if the offense just keeps going and going and going. So got to credit their pace, got to credit the game plan. And then a guy like Jaden Daniels, who, if you remember, Jay, when we talked about it at the beginning of the year, I was like, I'm just thankful the Bucs are getting him in week 1 at the beginning of the year, because this is what I was afraid of if they would have played the Commanders later on. Unfortunately, it was in the postseason, and it was the last game for the Bucs.
Yeah, pretty wild how their first game and last game of the season was against Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. The big topic of conversation now is kind of the future of Liam Cohen. And I know I saw you talking and chatting up with some of our pals up in Jacksonville as well. What do you think the future holds for Liam Cohen with the Buccaneers? Do you think he takes the job in Jacksonville? Are you one of those people that think that if he does get the opportunity to leave, that the Buccaneers should say, no, stay here. We'll get rid of Todd?
I would say that I'm not one of those people because I understand right now how easily we could all look at the situation and be like, why wouldn't you want Liam to stick around and continue to roll through offenses? And I do think it's an offensive league, but I also think there's precedent with the Dirk Cutter situation. So we know that the Bucs and the Glazers are both willing to do that, but also like that situation didn't work out. So if we're using that as the history to look at, yeah, it means the Bucs could do it from an ownership perspective, but that's not a good example of like it being something that was successful for the Bucs and for the organization. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I also think I look at this team 3 straight years with Todd Bowles at the helm, and a given he's not perfect, he's not a Hall of Fame coach. But they went from 8 to 9 to 10 wins, and they had 3 different offensive coordinators each year, Jay. So at the absolute least, you have to be able to give Todd Bowles credit for hiring his OC. Clearly, he's good at it. If back-to-back years, the guy becomes a head coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with that. I look at him and I wonder, it's kind of unique that he's a guy that when things go wrong, it's like he gets a lot of the blame right off the rip, right? And when things go right, it's like he doesn't even get mentioned. He gets no credit whatsoever, whether it's a hiring of Liam Cohen or when the defense plays well. As far as Liam Cohen goes, do you think he takes the job in Jacksonville if he gets offered?
Absolutely. You know, and you know what's crazy, Jay? Remember 2 years ago, since we just brought up Byron, remember how we talked about Leftwich not taking that job was such a smart move for him? And now he's not coaching anything. He's playing Madden like the rest of us. So I think, again, as we use history as an example, here in Tampa Bay, not to say that I think Liam's going to fall off like Byron did. You and I both know very different dudes, both, you know, in terms of being an OC and a person. But I think if you're Liam Cohen, you get an opportunity in Jacksonville specifically. You got a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who's a huge talent. You do have some weapons there. Brian Thomas Jr. breakout season as a rookie. You got some weapons in the backfield. So I think that would be something that he would take if offered. You know, and look, I think whether it's Jacksonville or another team, whether it's this year or next year, cut off the McVay tree, has had success, has done some good things. I just think there's a lot that organizations and ownership groups for these teams are to look at and like about Liam Cohen.
Yeah, I agree. I just think he's open-minded. He has the ability to turn a rushing offense from 32nd in the league to 4th in the league. We were talking before the season about, hey, get to 20th. We'll be happy with it. And they're talking about a top 5 rushing attack. And I know a lot of that has to do with the offensive line and Bucky Irving, but Liam Cohen definitely gets some of that credit as well. Let's see what else. Levante David, do you think he's coming back?
I hope so. You know, I just, God, man, he can still play. It's just a matter of if he wants to or not. I think in my heart and in my gut, I do think he comes back for one more because this iteration of the Bucs essentially like could run it back again next year. And I thought it was even murkier last season, Jay, when we didn't know about Mike Evans. We didn't know about Antoine Winfield and Tristan Wirfs' contracts. We knew they were going to get paid and the Bucs were going to figure it out, but it wasn't figured out yet. So I thought it was murkier last year. Not to say there aren't questions, not to say there aren't things to figure out. But we're not dealing with the Devin White drama. I think regardless, though, and I do hope Levante comes back, clearly, and you and I chatted about this at the draft, clearly linebacker is an area where they're going to have to figure out some things and make some big swings, either or both in free agency and in the draft. And it was something that didn't lend itself last year to them. And they were like, all right, well, we'll just work with what we got. But regardless of Levante at this point, like that's going to be a huge priority for this team.
Yeah, I agree. They need to address that position whether he comes back or not. And I looked at KJ Britt like, all right, hey, man, they like this guy. He was still firing him up before the playoff game last Sunday night. But there's just a lot to be desired at that position. I mean, he's not afraid to stick his nose in there, but in coverage, I mean, Devin White wasn't good. KJ Britt wasn't great either. And then you have a bunch of backups. You have JJ Russell in there, who's a he's a special teamer. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's definitely a lot less questions, I think, this postseason compared to last season, but that's just the Buccaneers. And who knows with Spytek and Greenberg, some of their front office guys as well. I want to ask you about the Tampa Bay Lightning and the worst kept secret in all of sports, playing in the outdoor game. How did you feel when that news officially came down after you brought it up a couple months ago?
For me, I was just like, yeah, I know.
The sauces came true.
But to that point, there were some like aspects of it that I wasn't positive about. Like I saw Rob Higgins say they sent the Yeti cooler saying like, we know how to keep things like brilliant. Like I didn't know that. I didn't know the intricacies of how this came to be. And similar to you and many, like I knew that Vinnick's been pushing for this for a long time. We knew they made a push at the All-Star game in 2018 when it came to town. Like we know that this has been a big deal and a big push from our area and from the Lightning to have it come to town. So I'm just excited, regardless of like the news breaking and the officialness of it. And I know we're going to find out in coming weeks. And I saw you had Rob Higgins on like more about how, and I'm interested to see that as well, because when I had heard the news, even a couple months ago or longer now, I guess October, they hadn't figured that part out yet officially. Like they had some conceptual ideas of like, we can use some shading, we can do this, we can do that. So like even in October, they weren't concrete in how they were going to do it, but they had some like things they felt good about. And I do think, even though I wish the Bolts got it before the Panthers, I like the idea of like collaborating and both teams trying to figure it out and letting them maybe kind of try to get a run at it first. If you can get it working in South Florida, it's feasible to think you can do it in Tampa Bay as well. So I'm excited for it. I'm doing some stuff on the side with the Positive Coaching Alliance. You know them very well. And we had an event at Amalie the other night, and I was talking to some of the folks working and behind the scenes. And like everybody I've chatted with, even from any level, is just so excited about the game coming to town. And it's gonna be a lot of fun, man. It's gonna be something unique, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and I wonder, after talking to Rob and then hearing you just say that, so the WWE, when they do these outdoor events, they have to put a canopy over. And I know that's something that Rob said, but I'm almost thinking, because we saw at WrestleMania at Raymond James Stadium, there was almost like a canopy, like a roof over the top, just in case there's any kind of rain and you didn't want any of that condensation to go into the ring. And I wonder if they have something similar to that here in Tampa, and it would probably be the same thing in South Florida as well. Because the big thing with them is going to be the humidity, right? And obviously rain or snow, that could happen anywhere. We've seen outdoor games in the past. I think it was Pittsburgh and Buffalo, maybe, where it was snowing and Sidney Crosby was skating like 4 miles an hour. So that kind of thing happens regardless of wherever you are. But yeah, it's going to be fun. Can't wait. And there's going to be a press conference for those that didn't hear. Another press conference coming out revealing how they're going to make this happen.
And the one thing I'll say, I hadn't actually went through this thought process yet while we're chatting about it. In the past, and I think I brought this up when I was talking about Florida, Georgia coming to Tampa before they broke that news. I coupled that with the idea that it's not a great kept secret. The Buccaneers organization wants to do some massive upgrades to Raymond James Stadium. Right. They want a roof. They're not going to get a roof because it's expensive as hell, but they probably can find a way to finagle a similar setup that the Hard Rock has down in Miami with the shading area.
Right.
That wouldn't solve the problem of having ice and having a game, but I would imagine it would help. So I wonder if, and you got a couple of years, I wonder if that comes into play as well, some upgrades to Recher that kind of couple along with what the Lightning are trying to do there for that outdoor game. But beyond that, the canopy thing seems to be the main like approach. And again, I'm very interested to see it. I can't wait. I'm gonna be excited either way. But definitely some smarter people than us are gonna have to figure that out.
How close of an eye have you been keeping on this Rays Stadium issue and all the back and forth? I mean, it's just so crazy. I've been reading these different things and minutes from county meetings and city council meetings. It's so wild. What is your take on everything we got, whether the Rays will play at the Trop in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think Colleen Wright's still crushing it. I saw you had her on as well. Like, just amazing job, and her and the whole staff over there at the Tampa Bay Times. A lot of people all over this. For me, I can say that in one sense, it's been nice to unplug from it a little bit because it's even when we were doing it day to day, it's so exhausting, and it's been that way for like 20 years. It feels like keeping up with the Rays. So I've unplugged a little bit from it. That being said, still have a lot of great relationships in that organization and talk to those folks. somewhat, on and off. And I can tell you, like, it seems like the sentiment within the organization from a bunch of levels is still a lot of uneasiness beyond this year playing at the Yankees minor league club in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of, not that they're not confident, but it's still such a mysterious thing internally, it seems, that, like, I feel like it would be tough for me to be confident about it. But that being said, and I'll even rewind it a couple months to when it looked like it was all falling apart and Stu sent the letter and it was like, it was bad. It looked ugly. Well, they've still been able to kind of get through that a little bit and move forward. So, look, ultimately, I hate this game we're playing. I hope something else changes and it gets more smooth, more transparent. But I don't think that that's realistic based on the history of it all, right? Like, we've been dealing with it. When we think we have it figured out, it falls apart. When it looks transparent, it's not. So, yeah, I do think ultimately the Rays do stick around. I think the St. Pete thing gets figured out. I just think it's going to be messy from the start to the finish, unfortunately. But ultimately, if we do keep baseball in Tampa Bay, and I still think that in my heart of hearts that's going to happen and it'll be in St. Pete. It's just going to be an ugly ride to get there.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It's at least it's going to be a unique season. I had the great Andy Freed join me yesterday after Bob Uecker passed, and just talked to him about a lot about Bob Uecker, but also his excitement for the team, because this is just going to be such a unique season. Playing at Steinbrenner Field, this side of the bridge, why not, right? Like, the Rays made the World Series in 2020 in a unique season during the pandemic. Everybody else is going to be picking all these other teams. Why not the Rays if they can get a bat or two? To go with this, I think one of the better starting rotations in the American League. I'm excited for the year because I think it's like there's endless opportunities for the Rays to improve and to really shock some of these teams.
Yeah, I think it'll benefit the Rays to go back to where they're best, which is the team that nobody's really paying attention to, right? Mm-hmm. The last few years, it's been more of like, oh, this is the team that's been in the postseason for 5 straight seasons. This is the team with, a young phenom, with an electric player like a Rosarina, like a lot of pieces and things that maybe people pay attention to the Rays in a way where they weren't just a cute story. They were a legitimate squad on the AL side to watch. I think they've kind of shifted with all the craziness that's happened the last couple of seasons, even last summer, to the team again that's an underdog that nobody's really going to expect, to make more than a little noise. Like, oh, it'll be cute at times, but can they compete? That being said, even though I think that'll benefit them, I don't know if they'll be able to unleash those expectations and overcome them. Because to your point, if they can add a bat or two, I'd be shocked to see them add 1, let alone 2, but they get creative and they figure things out. And although last year it didn't happen that way, I like a lot of the pieces that they got back in a lot of those trades and a lot of the moves. The rotation is going to be sick. So a lot of these games are going to be close, but can they capitalize? Do they have a guy that can step up in the lineup in big moments and take advantage? And based on last year, I would say if you're projecting a guy to be able to do that, it's only a projection. Like Josh Lowe, when is he going to turn into the MVP caliber talent that we think he can be?
Yeah, it's
you know how I feel about Junior Caminero, brother, but still a young pup. Like, so we'll see if one of those people can turn into the clutch bat. Fingers crossed, because I'd love to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun in Tampa this year.
So some other big news a couple days ago, Urban Meyer getting inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame with Nick Saban, ironically enough. And quick hello to John Momola there. Appreciate you, Rock. But yeah, I mean, Urban, and I've told you this many, many years, when I first moved, when I moved back here? No, when I first moved here, when Urban was down there at Florida, or up there at Florida, because we're in Tampa, it was just impossible not to root for them. Because obviously my buddy Tag, big Gators fan, but just such an innovative offense. And I still think to this day, nobody has ever deployed 2 quarterbacks better than he did with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. Like, it was flawless. Like, you knew in short yardage situations, he was going to go in there. He was going to make the plays. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we're going to take Chris Leak out. There was no bitching, no moaning. Like, to this day, I don't think I'm talking college or pro, nobody has ever handled the 2 quarterback situation better than Urban Meyer did that year. And, he rode that to a national championship. And regardless of how everything, screwed up in Jacksonville, this is the College Football Hall of Fame, but whether it was Ohio State, whether it was Florida, and I know going back to his other stops as well, but my goodness, man, this guy, just taking all the drama out of it. I mean, this guy was just a pure winner, one of the best college football coaches that I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, obviously his departure and then ending up at Ohio State, it left a sour taste in a lot of Gator fans' mouths. And I used to say this when I was in Jacksonville, because he was in Ohio State at the time when I was working for iHeart over there in Duval County. And I would say, like, I hate him right now, but I'm well aware that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're not going to care about the Ohio State stuff. He's going to have a statue in Gainesville someday. He won 2 titles. Like, that university, that program, it's just one that we talk about. We're basically Miami. We talk about the good old days. Well, no, he brought 2 more titles, in the later part of that first 2000s. So, yeah, so he made them relevant again, even after the Spurrier and Warfel domination that we already got to have. So I'm happy for him. It does seem like, too, just the last year and a half, Swamp Kings helped, too, the documentary on Netflix, that Gainesville, just generally, the Gators officially, but also the fans and the people in that area are accepting and bringing him back in a lot more than they had prior. So, yeah, it's awesome to see that he's going in. He's certainly deserving. Love him or hate him. He's one of the best coaches we've seen in college ball ever. And he will have a statue or something like that in Gainesville at some point. And it's deserved, and I'm excited to see it. You think about the big body of work and the championships over everything else.
Just think about it now, Zach. You're going to have Spurrier, Urban Meyer, and then your guy, Billy Napier. Those 3 guys going down in history as the 3 greatest coaches in Florida history. Listen, all right, so they were fantastic down the stretch. They played their ass off, and I thought Billy did a good job, man. And I know it was like one of those things where I think they played better. Let me see if this is right. If they play terrible, good, they're terrible, he's done, boom, you move on, you get the next guy. If they play moderately better, you're like, all right, it's a tough decision, but maybe they'll keep him. Maybe they played way better. They played way better. And you're like, oh man, there's no way they're getting rid of him now. And then you look at some of the, the draft class, and it's just my friends, yourself included, their thoughts of the Gators and how they changed 180. I mean, you and I were talking about, we didn't know if they were going to win another game last season. I was so thoroughly impressed. I watched that entire game against Ole Miss, where it was just like everybody was waiting for Ole Miss and Jackson Dart. And just Florida just kept playing. They just kept playing. They kept battling. And it was just like, yeah, it doesn't matter what you ranked. It doesn't matter what Lane Kiffin says. Like, the Gators were a better team that day. Like, you tip your hat, and they won all of these games. Your thoughts on how the season ended, the future with Billy going into next season?
Yeah, it's insane. Like, I've never seen a swing of emotion from like hating a guy to being like, he might be all right, like so quickly. Especially in college, where I feel like the passion's even more insane. Yeah, I still don't know if I'm buying Billy, but you got to bring him back with this class, right? You got Lagway. I don't even care about the rest of the offense. Like, they're going to have weapons. There's going to be, they've got a lot of those running backs coming back as well. They're going to find some more receivers. They've done a great job at adding some already from this class to heading into the next one. And Lagway's a star, right? Like, so he can overcome a lot of what Billy's going to screw up or could screw up. And I think as much as he's the star and he's the guy that we love to talk about, like, the defense was the reason they were able to be successful down the stretch. And they switched over play calling and they did some things differently. And the guys responded to it in a way that helped them come up huge quite often against some teams that were ranked, some good squads. And so I think if you have a better defensive play calling situation, the defenders are buying in. You got Lagway at QB. You're going to bring in some good recruits that want to play with DJ specifically.
Right.
Like, it's not in a place where Billy Napier is on cruise control, because he's still going to have to do a good job in some capacity for this team to be a contender in the SEC, Jay. But that being said, I still have that pit in my stomach with him being in charge, where, we saw him with Anthony Richardson for a year, and that didn't go well at all. That was not a fun season. So, not to say it'll be identical with Lagway, I just have a hard time buying the Gators as a team that we can take seriously with Billy at the helm. However, and you and I have chatted about this, the 12-team playoff has changed the dynamic and the landscape. Can Billy Napier, with a 12-team playoff, find a way to get Florida in? I think so, but I could see that happening and then being the type of team that gets blown out in the first round. So I'm going to enjoy it next year for whatever it is. I'm glad DJ's there. I'm glad that a bunch of recruits are coming aboard. I still don't buy Billy, but I think he could do what Norvell did 2 years ago and have one of those awesome types of seasons where you forget about all the shortcomings. Right. And then I think maybe 2026, we get a quick reminder if that happens.
Before I let you go, who do you got in the national championship game on Monday night? Man, it's going to be a good one. Two of the blue bloods in college football between Notre Dame and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm going with the favorite. I mean, I'm heavy on the Buckeyes. I think Ohio State's going to roll. I had definitely more friends that are on the Fighting Irish side of life, and I know it's been a fun ride for them. I'm happy for them. It just what a fun pathway these games. It's been a good time. Like, I've enjoyed it. I know there have been a lot of blowouts, especially in the first round, but it's been a good time. Good for Notre Dame. Ohio State went out before the season started and spent more money than anybody on NIL. They're loaded up from talent perspective. I like Ohio State, and I like the under. I like both defenses to show up pretty big. I think we'll have some big plays from the offenses, but like not that accumulate a ton of points, especially combined. So I like Ohio State. Definitely money line. I don't know how many points I like them by, but I like a money line. Give me them 7.5, and I'll take the under.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I feel like in years past, Notre Dame's done a good job. They understand they have to build in the trenches, but they do have some really dynamic players in the secondary. Love the running back. And Riley Leonard is one of those guys, man, the dual threat. We saw him at Duke. Like, he's going to have to play a flawless game because there's so much talent. You know, the running backs there for Ohio State, but man, especially in their secondary, they have Jack Sawyer being able to rush the quarterback. He finally stopped crying about the Michigan loss. He's been playing good. But that play against Quinn Ewers, like, if they win the national championship, you look back at that play in the college football playoff semifinals against Quinn Ewers, where Texas pushed to tie the game. Here comes Jack Sawyer. He rips it, goes back down the other way, and scores a touchdown. Like, that's the kind of stuff that movies are made out of, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to go against Ohio State. My grandma's looking down. She was a big Notre Dame fan. I want Notre Dame to win, but it's tough to think that Ohio State, because Ohio State's that team where to beat them 3 times in a season when they have $20 million towards their NIL, and they bring in some of those guys. And I know Kirk Herbstreit the other day was like, oh yeah, they use the majority of that money to keep their guys. I'm like,
oh, come on, bro.
I said, okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. You still paid them. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, oh, you didn't go out and poach guys from different schools and use $20 million to bring them in. It doesn't matter. You still use $20 million to keep your part of your guys here. Bring some other guys like Downs in. It is what it is. Like, you're playing the game. Don't apologize.
And it's legal. You're allowed to do it.
It's legal.
You're allowed to do it.
But don't think that we're not going to call you out on it. You know, it's a little different. It's a little different than the whole situation. All right. Follow him on all social media platforms. Zach on the mic. Everything that he's got going on with our guy, Brandon Kravitz, as well. Brother, it's been great to chat with you. And let's do it again soon, man. Have a great weekend.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate you. Good times.
You got it, buddy. The one and only Zac Blobner. Zach on the mic. Man. What a show so far. Excuse me. Ooh, man. Can't wait for the college football national championship game. Monday night. That game's going to be a good one. At least in the beginning. I look back at the last time Notre Dame was in the national championship game, losing to Alabama. That was the Manti Te'o team. You're wondering, can they go up against Nick Saban and take care of business? Well, didn't work out for them. We'll talk about that. And we'll preview that game on Monday as well. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms. Excuse me. That's the tough part about when you got a tickle in your throat like I do and you're hosting the show by yourself. There's no like cough button. There's no, co-host, and there's no commercial breaks either. So we're right at it, 90 minutes in, right here on the J Recher podcast. Follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok for now. Like and subscribe. On YouTube, if you miss my predictions, I'm going to post them a little bit later on today. I'm going to cut up all these videos and get them up on the page and social them out because college football, Monday night, we got NFL this weekend. We got Lightning Saturday night. I'm feeling a lot better than I did last night, so hopefully I'll be back in action at Amalie Arena. Let's bring him in here a minute early just because I'm coughing and I need some help. Welcome, Ed Encina, Eddie in the yard. What's up, buddy? Welcome.
You all right, Jay?
I'm dying over here. I'm dying.
Need some extra water? What do you need? Mix in a water there, bud.
Might want to mix in a water there, bud. I feel much better than I did last night. Did I even say goodbye to you last night or no?
I don't think you just kind of disappeared. Were you not feeling well?
No, first period, bro. I was done.
Oh, really?
Not feeling good. I had the Espo flu, I guess they call it. I was not feeling good. I was like, bro, first period, I was like, I told Tommy and Gary, I was like, I'm leaving. They're like, go get some rest.
There's a bug going around the Lightning dressing room right now. So
Is it?
Yeah. So I don't know if well, you weren't at skate, but there's some guys who are feeling under the weather after that trip. So
Really? How was the trip? Everybody wants to know.
the trip, well, I only went to Boston,
Yeah.
which was well worth the visit because there was a lot of news there. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because like you go up when you're down here for so long and you go up north to travel in January, you realize why you don't live there.
Right.
And how much of a bad rookie mistake it is to like forget your beanie on your carry-on and stuff like that. So I stayed just across the Charles River from the TD Garden. So like no more than a 5-minute walk. And each time I made that walk, it was brutal. Like, just brutal. Like the Charles River is completely frozen over. And, there's these, people are, just wearing basic, jackets and caps. And I'm just sitting there like holding my mittens over my ears like a baby trying to figure out how to keep warm. But yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, it was eventful. A lot of stuff going on, whether it was the stuff with Braden Point, getting to see Jack Finley's debut, and obviously the game itself. A lot of stuff happened there. Those are always big games. You always feel like those are the ones you want to circle when you're trying to pick out your travel, because it feels like something always notable happens when they play in Boston. So, and it did.
What do you make of the team and how they handled the Braden Point situation? I know it's very matter of fact. It's black and white, but like just being around the team, did they make a big deal about it? Did they talk about it a lot? Because it just seems like it's like, hey, these are the rules and that's it. And it's not more complicated than it really is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that, I think that's just the case. I mean, I think everyone knows the rules. I think, I think they all feel bad when that happens with a guy, because they know that it could happen to them too. I mean, and, whether it's Braden Point or I think Eric Chernak last year, he missed a meeting and had to sit. I think it happened to Point again in 2019. But it's one of those things where the rules are the rules, and I think that obviously Braden Point could help the Lightning on Tuesday night, no doubt. But I think everyone just kind of knows it, and I think as a part of the accountability of this room and this organization is kind of created, under the Vinnick ownership, under John Cooper. And the Breezeball Iserman kind of leadership group, and it sucks, right? Because probably there's no one who feels worse about it than Braden Point, than like laying his teams down and his teammates down, and not being there for him in a big game. But like I said, the rules are the rules, and I think hockey is one of those sports where we see as much as we can, but there's a lot that we don't see. So in a situation like that, if that rule's not in place and it's not enforced, we probably don't even know. You know what I mean? And until maybe, we don't know that he missed a team meeting. You know what I mean? Like, but once that's enforced, like we saw in morning skate, he wasn't on the power play reps or anything like that. Then you kind of, okay, something's going on here. And, when they make a call up for Jack Finley, you probably assume there that he's not going to play. You don't know why exactly, but, a lot of teams can keep that really to themselves and under the rug if they want to. And you got to give the Lightning credit for that. And that, is from top to bottom. It's from, ownership to the, to the hockey ops staff, to the, to the coaching staff, to the players, that everyone knows what's what and everyone's on the same page. And I think, the way Cooper talked about after the game was, it's a hiccup. Everyone knows Braden Point's a great teammate. Everyone knows that, he's one of the hardest working guys in the room.
He's a hard sleeper.
And maybe he's just a little bit hard sleeper. And, it is fascinating how that kind of happens too. It's kind of like, obviously these guys stay in really nice hotels, and, there's a team bus that there's a couple team buses that go to the arena for a skate. So I would have loved to have seen like how that all developed amongst the teammates, being like, well, where's Point? Where's
Pointer? Yeah.
And obviously, as we said, if he's not on the first bus, he could have been on the second bus. So I guess, you'll know that if you're a teammate. But, like I said, Cooper called it a hiccup, so, and, I think, Point kind of addressed a little bit in post game, that happened, and he wanted to be out there, for his team today and kind of, these aren't his words, but kind of make up for it. And obviously he had a huge game. And like he said, we all love watching Braden Point on the ice, because he can do some crazy things that, most people can't do. So, and then obviously the Lightning are better with him on it.
Ed, when you look at a situation like that, did they just call Finley up just because Point was out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why. I mean,
wow.
They're strapped there with, when they sent down Gonsalves, or when they place him on waivers, you have that 24-hour window where he's available to every team. And, but at that point, they made the decision that they weren't going to call up another forward. And from what I was told, it's like Finley was in the conversation at that point, but they made the decision not to. So you make that decision and you're really up against it in terms of numbers. Like, they needed Jack Finley to field the lineup, full lineup. And we've seen in certain times, I think a couple of years ago, I looked this up yesterday because, just because of Chernak getting hurt early, is in LA in 2022, they had to play with
5 defensemen. 4 or 5, 4, right? Yeah,
right.
I remember that.
Because a bunch of guys were hurt, and that was because of the salary cap. Like, they physically couldn't call up a guy. And this one's a little bit different. They have the money to call up a guy, but I think right now what Julian's doing is he's trying to kind of stash as much of that space as he can for an upgrade at the trade deadline. And so but they had the option of calling up a guy. They chose not to, and then this happens, which you really don't know is a thing until probably like 10:30 in the morning, right? They had 11 o'clock skate in Boston. I would assume that team meeting, they went on the ice at 11. I assume the team meeting is probably around 9:30 or 10. So he's not there, and they've got to figure out what to do. And Jack Finley was literally pulled out of practice in Syracuse on Tuesday and told, hey, you're going up.
So it's a good thing they were in Boston, because if they were across the country,
this wouldn't have happened if it was out west. It couldn't have worked.
They would have played with 11 forwards.
They would have had to play with 11 forwards.
Wow.
Yeah, 11 forwards and 6D, and then obviously, so they're at 18. They were at 18 skaters going into the day, and Jack Finley gets a call. He's told he's going up, hops on a flight from Syracuse, has enough time to land in Boston, take a shower, and head over to the rink. So, it is one of those. I mean, hockey more than anything, I feel like, has some of these great stories about how guys get their chances. Whether it's the e-bug situation, or it's a situation like that with Jack Finley. And obviously Finley was this guy who, I think, he's a big dude, 6'6", can play a physical game. And I think you wanted a guy like that in a game like against Boston, where we kind of knew that some of this, it could be physical, there could be some, a lot of stuff going on the ice. So he was a guy that they wanted. He was a guy they talked about going in, but obviously, like I said, they didn't make that move to add a 13th forward before going into morning skate. And then they had to make a move because, or else they would have been with just 11 skaters, and like I said, I mean, let's face it, that bottom line, that bottom 6 depth right now hasn't been great. So, if you do skate 11 guys, you're already down 1. Someone takes a puck, you're down to 10. Nikita Kucherov is already playing, a ton of minutes, whether it's on the power play or 5-on-5. He's probably the guy that's going to get a lot more ice time when you're shorthanded on the forward group. So, and for a guy like Finley, I've seen a lot of these these rookie laps that these guys get to do before warmups, and it's probably one of the coolest things because. Yeah. And especially where they are, I think like Cole Koepke got to do his in Madison Square Garden last year. Finley getting to do it in Boston. I mean, like that's really cool. And it's a memory. Geeky did his in Carolina this year. That's one of those memories that you're never going to forget. I mean, it's probably maybe even more than some of the game. So but for him, it was a quick up and down, and I'm sure we'll see him again at some point. But yeah, I think this is one of those times too where you want to check out and see how some of these guys in Syracuse can match up and potentially help you as you're trying to project how you do want to maybe make some moves as a trade deadline kind of approaches.
Yeah, they can either help you on the team or help you as trade bait and
for sure
on the way out. So you kind of showcase those guys as well. Any update on Chernak? Only played 1 shift last night, then left. Any update on him? Do we think it's going to be a long-term, short-term?
I talked to Cooper after the game, and he just said it was day-to-day. And obviously, I don't think he really knew that much. I mean, I think we'll know more tomorrow morning, if we see another defenseman out there, Right. I mean, because again, they're as much as, they're really at the limit
threshold, yeah.
Threshold here forward wise. It's always also on the D chord. And that's one thing that it's kind of been a little curious as to, how long you can stick with 6 guys, because I mean, the other night in Boston, Ryan McDonough takes a puck to the face and he misses, a good 10, 12 minutes of the third period, again, Chernak only took 1 shift last night and they played with, shorthanded for basically the entire game. So it's one thing as forwards, but like the defenseman takes so much, punishment, especially blocking shots and just the physicality of the position that you always like to have 7 guys. So like I said, if you see like a Max Crozier or someone like that at morning skate tomorrow, I would say that we can expect this to see Erik Chernak miss some time here, whether it's 1 game, 2 games, something like that. But again, this is a gauntlet that they're going through right now. 16 games in 29 days, a lot of them on the road. So it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of hotels, a lot of being on a plane. So, the guys talked about at their game is, it's a physical toll, more so than usual. So, I wouldn't see them necessarily hesitate if Chernak is questionable, even going into tomorrow, that they would have an extra guy in place, because you want to be shorthanded there, at all, especially, you're chasing points. You see a lot of teams right now that are getting hot in the division and the conference. So the Lightning have had this situation where they've had a lot of games in hand for most of the year, but this is the time of the year where they're starting to make up for it. And, it's one thing to have those games in hand. It's another thing to make good on it and get those points out of it. So these are important games and you want to be at your full capacity to be able to pick up those points.
Yeah. And as we record right now, the Lightning in 3rd place in the Atlantic. They have 51 points. Florida's in 2nd place with 55. Maple Leafs in 1st with 58. Leafs, Panthers, and the Bruins, who are 2 points behind the Lightning, have all played 46 games. The Lightning have played 43. So let's just say they win all 3 of those games. They'd have 6 points. They'd be a point behind the Maple Leafs and 2 points ahead of the Panthers. But just because you have games in hand, a double E, another double E. I told everybody to follow anybody with the initials double E when I left last night. So I wasn't feeling good. It doesn't mean just because you have the games in hand, you're going to win. I would almost think, that if they call up Crozier that he's playing, right? Because of the salary cap ramifications. I know we don't want to assume that, but I would guess that the only way they'd bring him up if he was going to play, because of why they're formulating the roster the way they are right now. So
there's that, and also the mentality of, like, especially a guy like Chernak who has been injury prone,
right?
Is you don't want to risk it if you can help him get another day or two. They're going to be off Sunday. But it would, and then travel. I think actually that Sunday's a travel day. But you anytime you can kind of extend a guy's ability to heal, you want to. In the regular season, thinking about that bigger picture of being as healthy as you can down the stretch and into the playoffs. So and again, Crozier is one of those guys who really proved that he was very trustworthy when he was here. He was a guy that I honestly thought had a really good chance of making the team in camp. He dealt with an injury in Syracuse and is just kind of coming back now. But, he's done everything to prove that he can be an NHL player here. So, it's not like you're bringing up a guy that you don't know who he is either. He's a trustworthy guy. We saw how well he played with Lilleberg when he was here. I think he can play with pretty much anyone. So, I think if you bring him up, it's, you can expect them to play because of those kind of situations. Yeah.
I'm hoping that they give Crozier a look down the stretch, because as much as I think Radish and Perbix are decent players, I feel like Max has a higher ceiling than both of those guys, and we know Chernak is there. I think they need to fortify in the blue line as well as the middle 6. I think a lot of people have been having those same type of discussions. What do you like from Connor Geekie since he got that healthy scratch? Because I know you and I were talking about him, and I've been kind of pushing, like, hey, I know he's 20, but everybody's like, hey, he's just a rookie, blah, blah. You got to be easy with him. But to me, man, I think at times you got to push young players too and be like, hey, like, you're better than this. Like, you got to step your game up. He comes back in the lineup, scores a goal the other night in Boston. What do you see from his game? And do you think he's going to be better suited on the wing with Cirelli and Hagel, or on that third line at the center spot?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a little bit of him move around within that middle 6. I think we're going to see him both, him in both of those situations. I mean, it's funny you asked that. I actually talked to him the other day, yesterday in skate. and he's actually one of the guys that's kind of battling a bug right now. So he told me to, keep my distance from him. But yeah, I think, one thing about him is, and I know, I might be sounding overly sympathetic here, but 20-year-old guy, obviously ceiling through the roof, right? But this is the first time that he's dealing with everything NHL, whether that's living on his own, whether that's dealing with the grind of a physical NHL season, whether that's getting accustomed to NHL teammates, coaching staff, all that stuff. So I expected kind of a little bit of a dip in his play right around this time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And this time last year he was living with a billet family in the OHL, and didn't have to cook for him, didn't have to cook for himself. Who knows if he's doing his own laundry, stuff like that. But I think he's a lot further off than most of us were when we were 20 years old. But he mentioned just like kind of getting used to just the physical and the mental aspect of this, and one part is not being too hard on himself. And Connor is a pretty low key guy, but internally he is very hard on himself. And I think the past week or so has added a little bit of that. And because think about it this way, is he played his brother twice, right? And so you have everyone kind of coming in, asking about him and his brother, whether it's the Boston people or us, and his family's in town for both games. And, that adds a little bit of pressure. I asked him, I was like, are you actually happy that this is kind of, you've done this and you're behind it? And he's like, oh yeah. There's nothing, like, I love my family. I love all my friends. I love my brother, but like all that stuff was just kind of piling on to already.
It's a lot.
Maybe,
yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do think that Connor Geekie has a special, not just a special, like natural physical talent, but I think he's also got a good head on his shoulders. And I think one thing that he benefits from is being around certain guys who've kind of put their arms around him in the sense of, and not necessarily the guys you think of as like the natural leaders of like the headsmen and the McDonoughs. Now he said that McDonough has told him, given him a lot of really good advice along the way, but I think he's really had a really good friendship and mentorship from guys like Nick Paul, Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli. That those guys that have, some of the younger guys on the team probably have a little bit more in common with them. Have really kind of taken him under his wing, and they know that as good as he can be, they benefit from it too. And that's why I really do like him on that Cirelli line, because I think as much as you can be in sync with guys on the ice, it's also off the ice as well. And I just think about the way when they first started gelling, how great that was, and that if you can extend that over a long period of time, how much more dangerous this Lightning team can be down the stretch. But again, and again, part of that is taking the pressure off of him again, is putting him on the wing there, instead of feeling maybe the pressure of being a third line center or something like that. But I think that's where he'll eventually kind of evolve. I don't necessarily think we'll see him there all the time in the next month and a half, but I think that's where this natural kind of spot is. And again, like he's a kid who is very rough on himself. So once he kind of finds that good median of like being rough on yourself and being held, and being responsible, right. It's good. But even guys like, Mikhail Sergachev used to talk about this all the time, and when we've heard from interviews with him is, how rough he is on himself and how he holds himself to a certain standard and stuff like that. And a lot of times that really got in Mikhail's way, And I think as you get older, you find that way through it, to find that balance of like not sweating the small stuff, but still holding yourself accountable to a certain standard. A lot of guys just kind of peak after that. So, and I think that's what Connor's doing. And the fact that Connor's doing that at age 20, it says a lot versus him doing it at say 25, 26,
Right. That's a good point. What do you got going on right now on the Tampa Bay Times?
Well, we got tomorrow. We got a good look at the new power play look. A lot of different moving pieces to the fact that when we looked at it in morning skate yesterday, you really couldn't tell which was the first unit and which was the second unit, because they were so kind of mishmashed together, guys from both units all together. So kind of explaining, why this works, the kind of the mentality why they've kind of gone to this. Obviously, the power play is going to be a work in progress. Maybe from game 1 to game 82. Hopefully,
Right.
after that, they've got it kind of all in sync. But the one thing I liked about what we saw yesterday was, a lot of movement, and keeping the puck in the hand of your best player, which is Nikita Kucherov. And I don't know how long that can go in terms of him playing the load of minutes that he played last night. I think he only played 28 minutes and was on both had almost 9 minutes of power play time. I don't know if you can do that, for the course of a season, but it works even on both sides, and I'll go a little bit into detail on why that works. And just coming up, we'll look to talk a little bit more about Connor Geeky and kind of stuff that you're talking about his just kind of the obstacles as he's had midway through his rookie season. And actually an interesting story, I don't know if you were still there for this game, but last night was first responder night.
Yep.
And at the puck drop was a TPD officer who had a heart attack on Christmas Eve answering a call. And this is kind of a cool story just about how, his, coworkers at TPD and Tampa Fire Rescue all really worked together to kind of bring him back. He basically had a massive heart attack, on his shift on Christmas Eve. And talking to the Tampa Fire Rescue people, they're saying that, this was a point blank right there. That happens with everyone around. But in a hospital, that's 10% chance of living. And he had great help from his coworkers at TPD, and then a great response from Tampa Fire Rescue, which is, I think, a great story when you talk about, it's one thing to kind of honor everyone, all of our first responders, stuff like that. But I think it's really cool, especially not just to see this, but also to see it within our community, and to know that, for our community to know, you're in good hands,
Right.
is how well they work together to save really kind of, essentially one of their own family members. So I also have that in I think that's going to be in my beat column over the weekend in our newsletter on TampaBay.com. So, and then next week they go back on the road. So I'll be in Chicago and Detroit for that back-to-back in the weekend. And keep on grinding.
That's right. TampaBay.com. Make sure you subscribe today. And before I let you go, come on, give me some Ravens stuff. Go ahead. Give me some Ravens. You think your boys are winning or what?
I'm worried, man. I think this is a Super Bowl,
Okay.
Having been in Boston cold for a couple of days, I would never want to be in Buffalo cold for
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I love Buffalo. I've taken a lot of trips to Buffalo. I think it's a great place to watch a game and cover a game. But it is I've walked to Tim Hortons where I've been, throgging through feet of snow. So that's going to be a challenge. But the Ravens are built on the run. So I just love the dynamic of Lamar and Henry, and I think that's tough to beat if especially in the postseason. So but I'm a little biased too, probably.
Sunday night, where are you going to be watching this game?
I'll be at home.
On the couch. You have a special. Yeah. You have a one-seater. Where are you going to be? Where's your spot? Where's Ed's spot?
Yeah, so we have the extension to the couch, so I have to stick my feet out. Got my 70-inch in front. Probably I don't eat on my couch because I don't like getting stains on there or anything. I'd worry. Okay. So I'll probably just be on the couch there, remote in hand, my dog by my side, and
you have a jersey on. Does your wife stay by you? Does she leave?
No, she'll for that game she'll be there. Yeah.
Okay.
Whether she lasts the whole game is another thing.
Right.
But because she's a snoozer. But yeah, no jersey, no nothing like that. I don't get too heavy into that. I also might dress my dog up. I might put a bandana on it. So we'll see
that. You want to get some free cheap pops there on social media. Dress up the pup.
It's always about the free cheap pops on social media.
Kids and pups, man. That's the way to go. They call it the Mick Foley social media directive, because every single time Mick Foley would go into a ring, he'd be like, on Long Island, New York, and everybody go crazy, yeah, all right, we got it, Mick, we got it.
And now
Tampa, Florida, and now everybody does it. Right. It's almost like a race to see who can get the cheap hop first. Subscribe today to the Tampa Bay Times and all of our friends over there from Ed, to John Romano, to Joey Knight, Mark Topkin, Rick Stroud, and the entire crew over there. Ed, appreciate the time, man. We'll see you tomorrow night. If I don't sustain a last minute injury or sickness, I'm planning on being there, and we'll talk to you next week. Good luck to you and your Ravens, my friend.
Thank you. Hopefully your day today, and we do see you tomorrow.
Thank
All
you,
right.
my friend.
Thanks for having me.
All right, pal. Ed Encina, Tampa Bay Times. Check him out. Eddie, I always want to say Eddie on the ice, Eddie in the yard. But yeah, subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. There's so much great content that they put out on a daily basis. You heard Zach mention Colleen Wright. She's been all over the Tampa Bay Race Stadium saga. Yeah, we have so many talented people here in the Tampa Bay area. People ask me all the time, what's the greatest part about working here in Tampa? And it's not the players, it's not the games, it's my colleagues, it's the people that I work side by side with, and to be able to go to a Lightning game all the time, and to be able to see the Eric Erlindsons of the world and the Eddie Encinas of the world and Phil Esposito and Bobby the Chief Taylor and guys like that. Like that's really truly what it's all about. All right, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok for now. Subscribe, please, on YouTube. The subscribers, over 800. You guys are killing it. I went from 35 at the end of November to now it is January 17th, and I have over 800. Thank you. We're going to hit that goal of 1,000 by the end of this month. Follow me on Twitter, trying to get that over 9,000, over 10,000, trying to get over 4,000 followers on Instagram at Recher. Follow me everywhere. Let everybody know. Let's continue the build. Let's continue this going forward, because there's nothing else going on at noon here in the Tampa Bay area, live and local, talking about the things that you want to hear about, whether it's here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. I am here. I am working. I am grinding for you. All right, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Be safe out there with your friends and your family. Go Bulls, go Bolts, and everything else you got going on this weekend. I'll be back on Monday at noon. My guy Ian Beckles will join us at 12:30. That's going to do it all for me today right here on the Recher podcast. I am gone. Peace out.